Okay, so here we are in map 4, which is the entrance to the mines. This was the very first area I built, and those who played the demo when it came out, it was really a showcase to show the level of quality that I was going for. I was really happy with how this whole level turned out at first, so I really wanted to get it out there to sort of show people what I was doing and to get people excited. Originally I had some pickups going on over here. I removed them and I just put this in as a point of interest. It's an interesting point to note though, because people thought that you were supposed to do something with it, or it has been suggested it might have been nice to, if you turned it off, then a bunch of antmines spawned here, and the player would be punished for their curiosity as to what happened when they pressed the button. It's quite a nice idea. I recommend it for other people. But as it is, actually, the dust you can see kicking up is actually part of the model, and it just looks fantastic. It looks so good. Really well done. Okay, so Alex has already kind of given us a hint that, you know, we could just get the gate open. So obviously the obvious way is to head on up. That post you notice there is see-through. I can move through it. It's not solid. That's on purpose because it was in the way, and Alex kept getting snagged on it. So I don't think you should worry too much about details like that sometimes. I wanted quite a brutal fight up there, or quite a brutal fighter. Come on, Alex, move. Oh man, we're having such problems today with this. Right. Let's get her out of the way. Oh, my mod is so buggy. Right, okay, fine. So we had quite a good fight up here with this guy. There is an achievement for shooting the crow, which I don't think anyone found at all. But what I wanted to do is all the way through the mod was have achievements for shooting the crows that appear. But I didn't do it in the end. Here is a nod to TF2. I don't know if you noticed, but that is another online bit of artwork I found for TF2. You can see it's a female version of the pyro. I found a whole bunch of like glam model shots of the different characters of female, which are quite fun.
Can you get it going again?
Yes, I can. Okay. This is, you know, a pretty simple puzzle, but once again, here I'm just changing the pace of play a bit. I had this guy outside. You can kill him in various brutal ways. I quite like the circular saw there. And at one point I had some pickups here as well. I think in my first test map, Dad's pointing out the fact that you could see over the edge of the map there, which was bad, so I added some boulders in, block that off. I mean, really, when you look at this area, it's just a square, which is a bit lame. I probably could have made it a bit more interesting, but didn't really have the time. One thing I did like about this area is the kind of the picture it constructs. It's like an image. One thing that was quite definite in my mind was I wanted to when you looked upon this area, and we'll just go over here and take a look. When you first come in, you look up. You can see we've got sort of several layers to the image, so I was going to use this as a background image for the mod, and you've probably seen this image quite a few times. So you've got the car, the fence, the stairs, the building, and finally the water tower, and it sort of creates a layered image. You see that in the hotel as well with the crane. Those are quite definitely on purpose for the most part. I try to move things around to create these nice vistas with quite a lot of depth and quite a lot going on in them. Couldn't do it everywhere, but where I could, I tried my best to do that, and I think it really it reminds us of episode 2, and we've seen quite a lot of good stuff there in that way. I've no idea why Alex is over there. Whatever, she's clearly having issues today. Let's move on. So now we're kind of getting into some very obvious Half-Life 2 gameplay, and with we're heading into zombie territory, and I think we've got no target still on, which is the reason why. There you go. And I wanted to really kind of replicate the stuff we'd seen in the mines and do some interesting new stuff. But all this began with me trying to replicate the mines feel, and that was done with just a few simple displacements on the floor, this kind of wall texture, and then you just sort of build it up around the wall a little bit around the edges, and it just looks great. It looks fantastic. People have commented my ceilings are all very flat and boring, and yes they are, I agree. Should have tried harder. Here I was using a mechanic that I was told about, which is to use barnacles to indicate, to get the player to look upwards. If there's something important that they need to look up to see, use barnacles, because the player will see the tentacles and look up immediately to see the actual barnacle itself. I added a few. I wanted to add lots of extras in my maps, and here is one of them, in case you didn't spot it. You can shoot that and the goodies fall down, including a dead body as well. Quite how the dead body got up there, we don't know. We'll never know. Even I don't know, and I built the map. I also quite like the idea of chucking the goodies into the water and making the player go and fish them out. The particles and that kind of thing, it is what it is. This is what particles look like in Half-Life 2. It doesn't look fantastic, but it's not awful either. I quite like this. I hadn't seen this before, where you've got a ladder underwater with a being blocked underwater and something you had to break. So that was a bit of a interesting thing for me, which I hadn't seen before, which I was quite happy with. Okay. It sort of gives the player that little bit of panic when they come up, because they can't reach the air, and then they have to kind of hack away. We've seen it in lots of movies, so I thought I'd put it in. This was a bit of a happy accident, the way this works. Just obviously, you're blowing up the barrels, it's going to drop the gate, but I don't think players really realise where they are when they do it. It's just the only way out. Now, if you watch the explosions, that final one, the timing, it clears the gate out of the way, clears this fence out of the way. That was completely and totally by accident. That was not my intention at all. You'll also notice that that bit of fence has completely disappeared, and that's fully intentional because the car kept getting snagged on it when it drove through. I kept these ones because these were quite easy to drive over, but for some reason that bit of fence really caused a problem, so I just had it disappear once it exploded. There's lots of extras in the mines. Here's one of them. The idea of being you pick it up and sort of fish it out. I'm not sure how many players really picked up on those, but there's quite a lot of them. And obviously, it's quite nice. Alex is there waiting for you and that kind of thing, so it all sort of fits together quite well. That mine entrance with the signs sit on it, the way it is directly stolen from episode 2. This here, I just replicated exactly what I saw in episode 2, and those signs and those kind of angles are done straight from episode 2 as well. Wow, that went a bit wrong. Okay. The idea, people have said these corners are quite tight. That's the reason why I raised the corners so that it was quite similar to a sort of a rounded car track, so you could kind of really ramp it around the corners if you wanted to. It's the same reason why I put the car barriers in the tunnel section, so that you could really sort of just hit the barriers and slide yourself around the corner. There's a goodie over there if you hadn't noticed. You have to kind of get that out the way before you can get to it. Okay, a lot of people really enjoyed charging around the mines, running the zombies over. I enjoyed it too. That's the reason why I put it in. It felt like something that you would want to replay quite a lot. And actually, got killed here quite a lot, I think, with the especially with the zombine. Can be quite tricky if you get snagged on something. There is quite a lot of clipping through the mines to stop you from getting snagged on any of these beams in the car. There is a car clip entity, vehicle clip, which is really useful for this kind of thing. You can clip all of the corners and that kind of thing, and make the car driving a lot smoother. But of course, the minute the player gets out of the car, all of this is still there. You have to forgive me, I have slight hiccups. Okay. Another thing I learnt a lot from the games, and I mentioned it in my video on design, is that to block the entrance to everything really with physics props, like we've done there with the boards, it just adds more to the gameplay. You're continually clearing physics props out of the way and that kind of thing. This is a prop, not a prop at all. This is a brush that's been turned into a fizz box.
Taking the scenic route, eh?
I use those quite a lot. Same as the doors on the mines that we blew off. Those are a physics prop too. A fizz box even. They're quite useful for building your own physics props. This was meant to be a much bigger section. It's kind of weird that this quaking and stuff only really happens here in the entire mine section for some reason. It doesn't really make much sense. Yeah, it was meant to be kind of like an ongoing thing, and I just only kept it for this one bit. People quite liked it, I think. Just the idea that it was a sort of a collapsing mine shaft. If you sit and wait here, it will go on forever. That entire mine shaft will fill up with physics props. It will probably kill your computer at some point. 2 minutes of physics going on. Okay. This was intended to be a bit more of a complex puzzle that we've got here. The idea was going to be that you have to go and find a bunch of those weights and drop them in. I tried that, and for some reason, I'm trying to remember what it was. It just wasn't working very well. I think there was the possibility that you could lose them, or I don't know, just in relation to the door, the physics just wasn't working very well. So in the end, I just had it pre-weighted, and then all you got to do is just move this to get the gate open. People like this kind of mechanics stuff. If you can get more of this in your map, then
Hey, and you found a gun.
They'll like you. I think I mentioned before on some of the commentaries I've done that the gun in here was purely because I had that line for Alex to say, and I couldn't find any other line to congratulate you that would fit properly, so I had her say that, and I placed the gun there so that it would make sense. These guys eventually do catch you up, as you can see. If you don't kill them, they will come and get you. Okay. The next section, we've got a jump coming up. The jumps are quite tricky to do if you're kind of on the move, because you're sort of telegraphing it. You want the player to know there's a jump coming up. So you can see there's a jump, I think, hopefully. So hopefully you will. But then you've got Alex saying hit it as well, and hopefully the combo of all those things will get you to hit the speed and get you over it. This section, there's a map or an instance dungeon for World of Warcraft called the Dead Mines, and it's got this great spiral cavern, and I always loved the design of it, so I thought I'd build my own one. So it was a kind of an exciting environment to be in. Originally in that section there, I had barnacles as well that would pick the player up. It was annoying, so I removed them. The overall design of this area I quite like. The stalagmites and stalactites. This and the cavern where you do the big jump, which we're coming up to now, are both the same map. They're both the same cavern, basically, with different interiors. Once again, this is about modular mapping, so I created one cavern and I used it for a couple of various different things. There's some goodies down here in case you didn't know. This ladder I had a bitch of a time getting to work. Darren, when he play tested it, basically said that I should add this ladder and add goodies, so I did, and then it just took me forever to get to work. It was horrible. So thanks, Darren. Went through various playtesting of this jump coming up. I think one of the challenges was to get the triggers working correctly, so that Alex said what she wanted to say at the right time. The other thing is that at first I just had this open, and the player didn't really understand there was a jump or a thing going on, that they were going to have to jump it. So the idea was, and I can't remember who suggested it, but the idea was to come and have something blocking it, so the player would have to come and investigate first and would see what they were about to get themselves into. I don't think these gates work very well. I think these probably should have been removable gates that I could have just fired. You could have just punted them out of the way into the water. I put them on hinges. They tend to close on you before you get there, so you tend to have to kind of push your way through them. But yeah, so the player kind of gets the idea. I think, looking back, I probably could have put some barnacles on the edges as well to sort of pick up some of the debris. If you fall in the water, you die, I think. Yeah, because otherwise you won't have Alex with you. If the car falls in the water, you definitely die because you've lost the car. I'm trying to remember if you can survive if you just jump straight in. I don't think so. I think I put in a watery death trigger there. Even though there's a ladder and it looks like it's what you should do, it's not particularly well done. But I think players get the idea of what you're going to have to do here. The jump itself is tricky but fun. So I think once again this falls into the sort of category of player is okay with it being a bit tricky because they're willing to come back and give it another go as many times as they like until they get it right. There is an awful lot of clipping on this jump to make it work. Oh, and sometimes it goes wrong. This is probably the most bug-ridden, opportunity playthrough I've ever had of this game today, doing this. But hey, that's okay. There we go. So this is clipped like crazy here for the car. It's almost impossible to, I think it's almost impossible to miss, which was kind of the point. There we go. And I think there is a situation where you can have the car just floating in midair there because of the clip brushes. Immediately after that section, I had this waterfall, and it was pointed out, well, that's silly, you don't even need the car after that jump, why bother? And I was like, okay, so I did more of a map there. I was quite happy with how this section turned out with the waterfall being underwater. I added Alex's comment there to really sort of, make the point that I liked it. Obviously, the only problem is through the particles you get this horrible kind of stuff going on. Whatever, it is what it is. I still think that the way I put the rocks together and the way the water comes out and everything down into the void is still quite good. I like it. I learnt this from episode 2, listening to their commentary. If you want the player just to stop for a minute, don't put a hard barrier in the way, just put a couple of barrels and the player will actually stop and look around and spend a bit of time before they move on. This bit, for some reason, Alex really didn't like. She kept bugging out and getting stuck. Some people might have encountered that. It was kind of annoying. I had quite a good time surprising the player with that bit. But first I only had one antlion here. I decided to add the second one. It's a, I think it's a good lesson to learn that when you are introducing a brand new bad guy that the player hasn't come across before in your mod, try and introduce them in an interesting way. From there they sort of took us by surprise, so I think that was quite an interesting way to introduce the bad guys. And that is the end of map 4. And we're heading into the final map, which is much bigger than all the rest, but we'll give that a go in a second.